They are running, not physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. They are running from pain, the grief they refuse to feel, the anger they will not express, the disappointment they cannot face, the loss they will not process. They have built their entire life around avoiding pain, every choice designed to minimize discomfort, every relationship structured to prevent hurt, every risk not taken because it might lead to suffering. They tell themselves, this is smart. This is self-protection. This is learning from the past. But it is not. It is imprisonment. Because the pain they are avoiding is not just pain, it is the gateway, the portal, the only path to the freedom they desperately want but cannot have, cannot access, cannot even imagine. Because to be free, they must feel. They must stop running. They must finally, terrifyingly, turn around and face the pain they have spent their entire life fleeing. And they cannot do it, will not do it, would rather stay imprisoned in a controlled life than risk the devastation of feeling everything they have been suppressing. So they stay stuck, stay small, stay safe, and call it living when it is actually slow death. Carl Jung discovered something that changes everything about how we understand suffering and transformation. He found that what we refuse to feel does not go away. It goes into shadow. It lives in the unconscious, and it controls us from there, creating the exact limitations we were trying to avoid. The person who avoids grief becomes unable to love deeply because deep love requires the capacity for deep loss. The person who avoids anger becomes a doormat, unable to set boundaries or advocate for themselves. The person who avoids disappointment becomes paralyzed, unable to take risks or pursue dreams. The person who avoids pain becomes imprisoned in a life so controlled, so small, so limited, that it barely qualifies as living. Jung taught that the only way out is through, that we cannot go around pain, cannot skip it, cannot avoid it without paying a devastating price, the price of freedom, the price of aliveness, the price of becoming who we actually are instead of remaining who we became trying to stay safe. This is why they feel stuck, why nothing changes, why their life feels like Groundhog Day, repeating the same patterns, the same limitations, the same frustrations. It is not because they lack opportunity. It is not because they are cursed. It is because they are avoiding the pain that would liberate them, the grief that would crack open their heart and allow real connection, the anger that would give them access to boundaries and power, the disappointment that would teach them resilience and realistic hope, the loss that would show them what actually matters. They are trading freedom for comfort, trading aliveness for safety, trading their actual life for a pale imitation designed to minimize pain. And it is working. They are experiencing less pain, but they are also experiencing less everything, less joy, less connection, less meaning, less life. Because you cannot selectively numb. You cannot avoid pain without also avoiding everything that makes life worth living. Intimacy, risk, vulnerability, growth, all of it requires the capacity to feel pain, and they do not have that capacity. Because they spent their life developing the opposite, the capacity to avoid, to suppress, to control, to run. Today they are going to see the four pains they are avoiding that are blocking their freedom, the grief they will not feel that keeps them from loving, the anger they will not express that keeps them powerless, the disappointment they will not face that keeps them paralyzed, and the loss they will not process that keeps them clinging to what is already gone. Look at these four avoidances, not with judgment, not with shame, but with the recognition that what they have been calling self-protection is actually self-imprisonment, that the pain they are avoiding is not the enemy. The avoidance is. And until they stop running, stop controlling, stop building their life around pain avoidance, they will remain trapped, limited, unfree, living a fraction of the life they could have if they were willing to feel everything instead of feeling nothing. Jung believed that suffering consciously is the path to transformation, that pain avoided remains, pain felt transforms, and transformation is what they need. Not more strategies for avoiding pain, not more ways to stay comfortable, but the courage to finally stop running and face what they have been fleeing, to feel the grief, to express the anger, to face the disappointment, to process the loss. Not because it will feel good, it will not, but because it is the only way through, the only path to freedom, the only portal to the life they actually want. The pain they are avoiding is not blocking them from freedom. Their avoidance is. And the moment they stop avoiding, the moment they turn around and face what they have been running from, everything changes. Not immediately, not magically, but fundamentally. Because pain felt is pain that can finally move through them instead of staying stuck in them. And movement is freedom. The freedom they cannot have while they are still running. The freedom that waits on the other side of the pain they refuse to feel. If they recognize the grief, the sorrow they have been suppressing for years or decades, they have revealed the pain avoidance that is destroying their capacity for connection. They do not cry, do not mourn, do not allow themselves to feel the weight of what they have lost. Maybe it is a relationship that ended, a parent who died, a dream that failed, a version of themselves that disappeared. Whatever it is, they refuse to grieve it. They push it down, tell themselves to move on, to be strong, to focus on the positive. They distract themselves with work, with substances, with constant activity, anything to avoid the crushing weight of grief that lives beneath the surface. And they think this is working, think they are handling it, think they moved on, but they did not. The grief is still there, unprocessed, unfelt, controlling them from the unconscious, making them unable to love fully, unable to connect deeply, unable to risk their heart again, because to risk means potentially experiencing more loss, and they cannot handle the loss they have not processed. So they stay defended, stay surface, stay safe. If grief avoidance is their pattern, their freedom is not lacking opportunity to connect. It is lacking the capacity to grieve what was lost, so they can finally open to what could be. They learned to avoid grief early. Maybe they grew up in an environment where crying was weakness, where grief was drama, where they were told to get over it, move on, be strong. Maybe they experienced a devastating loss, and the pain was so unbearable that they made an unconscious vow, never again. Never let anything matter that much, never get that close, never risk that level of devastation. So they shut down their grief response. Learn to intellectualize loss instead of feeling it. Learn to stay busy instead of sitting with sorrow. Learn to minimize everything so nothing hurts too much, and it worked as protection, but it destroyed them as a strategy for living, because life is loss. Relationships end, people die, dreams fail, bodies age, nothing lasts, and if they cannot grieve, they cannot fully live, because fully living requires loving deeply, and deep love means deep loss. They cannot have one without risking the other. In Jungian terms, this is the suppression of the mourner archetype, the part of the psyche that knows how to sit with sorrow, honor what was lost, and slowly, gradually let it transform. Jung taught that grief unprocessed becomes depression, becomes numbness, becomes the inability to feel anything deeply, because feeling deeply means risking grief. If they avoid grief, they are not protecting themselves from pain. They are creating a different kind of pain, the pain of emotional numbness, of superficial connection, of a life so defended that nothing can hurt them, but also nothing can truly reach them. They have built walls so high that loss cannot get in, but neither can love, and they are lonely, disconnected, going through motions of relationship while feeling nothing real, because nothing real is safe. Real means vulnerable, and vulnerable means grief is possible, so they stay unreal and call it moving on when it is actually staying stuck. People who avoid grief live half-lives. They have relationships but do not let anyone truly close, because closeness means potential loss. They pursue goals but never fully invest, because investment means disappointment is possible. They go through the world at arm's length, present but protected, engaged but defended. And they think this is wisdom, think they are avoiding unnecessary pain, but what they are actually avoiding is life, because life without grief is life without love, life without investment, life without meaning. Everything meaningful involves loss. The relationship that transforms you will eventually end or change. The person you love most will die. The body you inhabit will age and fail. The dreams you pursue will not all come true. This is not pessimism. This is reality. And denying reality does not protect you from it. It just prevents you from being present for the beauty that exists alongside the pain. Breaking free from grief avoidance requires the hardest practice. They must finally feel what they have been running from, must sit with the grief they have suppressed for years, must cry the tears they have been holding, must mourn the losses they never processed. This does not mean wallowing, does not mean getting stuck in sorrow. It means finally allowing themselves to feel it fully, so it can move through them instead of staying stuck in them. Grief is not endless when you allow it. It has a beginning, middle, and end, but only if you feel it. If you avoid it, it becomes chronic, becomes the background noise of your life, becomes the reason you cannot fully show up for anything. The avoided grief is keeping them from freedom, from love, from the capacity to risk their heart again because they finally processed the pain of previous losses. They do not need to avoid grief, they need to finally feel it and discover that they can survive it. That feeling, it does not destroy them. That on the other side of grief is not more pain, it is freedom. The freedom to finally love again, fully, deeply, without holding back, because they know they can survive loss. They have felt it before, and they will feel it again. And that is okay, because the love is worth the grief. The connection is worth the loss. The aliveness is worth the pain. And they will never know that until they stop avoiding grief and finally let themselves feel it. If they recognize the anger, the rage they have been swallowing for years, they have revealed the pain avoidance that is keeping them powerless. They do not get angry, do not raise their voice, do not express frustration or outrage. They have been taught that anger is dangerous, destructive, unacceptable, that good people do not get angry, that expressing anger means losing control, damaging relationships, becoming the villain. So they suppress it, push it down, smile when they want to scream, stay calm when they should rage, accept violations that should provoke fury. And they think this is maturity, think this is being the bigger person, think this is emotional regulation, but it is not. It is emotional suppression, and the anger they will not express is not gone. It is there, building, festering, controlling them from the shadows, making them passive, making them a doormat, making them unable to set boundaries, advocate for themselves, or claim their power. If anger avoidance is their pattern, their freedom is not lacking opportunities to stand up for themselves. It is lacking access to the energy that would allow them to do it. The energy of righteous anger that they have labeled as bad and buried alive. They learn to suppress anger early. Maybe they had a parent who raged and they vowed never to be like that. Maybe they expressed anger once and experienced devastating consequences, punishment, rejection, abandonment. Maybe they grew up in an environment where anger was dangerous, where expressing it led to violence or withdrawal of love. Or maybe they absorbed cultural messages that anger is wrong, that nice people do not get angry, that expressing anger means being out of control or aggressive. So they learned to swallow it, to turn it inward, to direct it at themselves instead of at the person or situation that warranted it. And now, as adults, they cannot access anger even when it is appropriate, even when they are being violated, even when someone crosses a line that should provoke rage. They feel nothing. Or they feel guilt for the anger they do feel. They apologize for being upset. They minimize violations. They excuse inexcusable behavior, because accessing anger feels more dangerous than accepting mistreatment. In Jungian psychology, this is the suppression of the warrior archetype, the part of the psyche that knows how to defend, to fight, to set boundaries, to claim power. Jung taught that anger is not inherently destructive. It is energy, life force, the energy of self-protection and boundary setting. When expressed appropriately, anger is healthy. It defends against violation. It communicates, "This is not okay." It creates the energetic force field that says, "Do not cross this line." But when anger is suppressed, that energy does not disappear. It turns inward, becomes depression, becomes passive aggression, becomes chronic illness. The body holds the rage that the voice will not express, and the person becomes powerless, unable to defend themselves, unable to set boundaries, unable to say no, because no requires anger, boundaries require anger, self-advocacy requires anger, and they do not have access to it. They cut themselves off from their own power because they were taught that power is dangerous. People who suppress anger live as victims, not because they are weak, but because they have no access to the energy that would allow them to stop being victimized. They are violated and stay silent, disrespected and smile, taken advantage of and say nothing. And then they wonder why people keep treating them badly, why they keep ending up in situations where they are used, dismissed, or disregarded. It is because they have no boundaries, and boundaries require anger, not rage, not violence, but the clear, firm energy that says, "This stops now." And they cannot access that energy, so they stay violated, stay powerless, stay stuck in dynamics where they are perpetually the one who accommodates, who adjusts, who takes the hit. And they tell themselves, this is being spiritual, being evolved, being compassionate. But it is not. It is being afraid of their own power, afraid that if they access anger, they will become the monster they fear. So they stay small, stay powerless, and call it peace when it is actually imprisonment. Breaking free from anger, suppression requires reclaiming anger as ally, not enemy. They must understand that anger is information. It tells them when a boundary has been crossed, when something is not okay, when they need to defend themselves or others. Anger is not the problem. Unprocessed, unexpressed anger is the problem, and they have decades of unprocessed anger stored in their body. They must learn to feel it, to express it appropriately, to use it as fuel for boundary setting instead of suppressing it and staying powerless. This requires practice, requires learning that expressing anger does not make them a bad person, does not mean losing control, does not mean destroying relationships. Healthy anger strengthens relationships by creating clear boundaries, by communicating what is acceptable and what is not, by allowing both people to know where the lines are. The anger they suppress is not keeping them safe. It is keeping them trapped. And the freedom they want requires reclaiming their power, requires accessing the energy of anger, requires finally, courageously, learning to express what they have spent their life suppressing, not as violence, as voice, as boundary, as the clear, powerful energy that says, I matter, my limits matter, and you will respect them or you will not have access to me. That is anger's gift. And they will never receive it until they stop avoiding it and finally let themselves feel it. If they recognize the disappointment, the crushing gap between what they hoped for and what actually happened, they have revealed the pain avoidance that is keeping them paralyzed. They do not try, do not risk, do not pursue what they actually want, because wanting means the possibility of not getting. Trying means the possibility of failing. Hoping means the possibility of disappointment. And disappointment is the pain they avoid most desperately, so they have stopped wanting anything real, stopped hoping for anything specific, stopped trying for anything that matters. They tell themselves they are being realistic, being mature, managing expectations, but what they are actually being is terrified, terrified of the pain of wanting something and not getting it, of investing and losing, of hoping and being crushed. So they stay small, stay vague, stay uncommitted. They pursue goals they do not actually care about, because if they fail, it will not hurt. They stay in situations they have outgrown, because leaving means risking disappointment in what comes next. They do not ask for what they want, because not asking means not being rejected. If disappointment avoidance is their pattern, their freedom is not lacking opportunity. It is lacking the courage to risk disappointment by wanting something real. They learned this avoidance through devastating disappointment. Maybe they hoped for something as a child, and it did not happen, and the pain was unbearable. Maybe they invested in a dream, and it failed, and they vowed never to care that much again. Maybe they were repeatedly disappointed by people who promised and did not deliver, and they learned that hope is dangerous, that wanting is setting yourself up for pain. Or maybe they watched someone else get destroyed by disappointment and decided that the way to avoid that fate is to never want anything enough to be disappointed when you do not get it. So they developed a strategy: minimize wanting, stay detached, never hope too specifically, never invest too deeply, keep everything at arm's length so if it does not work out, it will not hurt too much. And it worked as pain avoidance, but it destroyed them as a life strategy. Because a life without real wanting is not a life, it is an existence, a pale imitation designed to minimize pain by also minimizing everything else. In Jungian terms, this is the death of the seeker archetype, the part of the psyche that wants, pursues, hopes, strives. Jung taught that desire is the engine of growth, that wanting something and pursuing it is how we become who we are meant to be. But when disappointment becomes unbearable, when the gap between hope and reality is too painful, People kill their desire. They stop wanting, stop hoping, stop seeking, and they think this is wisdom, think they are protecting themselves. But what they are actually doing is choosing death over life, because life is wanting, life is hoping, life is pursuing. And yes, pursuing means sometimes failing. Hoping means sometimes being disappointed. Wanting means sometimes not getting. But the alternative is worse. The alternative is never wanting anything real, never hoping for anything specific, never pursuing anything that matters. And that is not protection, that is prison. People who avoid disappointment live in perpetual limbo. They do not commit to relationships because commitment means risking heartbreak. They do not pursue careers they actually want because wanting means risking not getting. They do not try for goals that matter because mattering means disappointment will hurt. So they stay in the middle. They pursue mediocre goals they do not care about. They stay in okay relationships that do not fulfill them. They build lives that are fine, but never great. Because great means risking terrible. Fulfilling means risking devastating. Real means risking loss. And they would rather have a controlled, mediocre life than risk the pain of aiming for something real and missing. And they tell themselves this is being smart, being realistic, being mature, but it is not, it is being terrified. And their terror is running their life, keeping them small, keeping them stuck, keeping them from ever experiencing the fulfillment they claim to want, but are too afraid to pursue. Breaking disappointment avoidance requires accepting that disappointment is not the enemy. It is the price of admission, the cost of playing the game, the inevitable result of wanting anything real. You cannot avoid disappointment without also avoiding desire. And desire is what makes life worth living. The work is not learning to avoid disappointment. The work is learning to survive it, to feel it fully when it happens, and discover that it does not destroy you. That you can want something, not get it, feel the crushing disappointment and still be okay, still be whole, still have the capacity to want again. This is resilience, not the absence of disappointment, but the capacity to feel it and continue anyway, to keep wanting, keep hoping, keep trying, even though disappointment is guaranteed at some point, because the trying is worth it, the hoping is worth it, the wanting is worth it, even when it leads to disappointment. Because a life of wanting and occasionally being disappointed is infinitely better than a life of never wanting anything real. They do not need to avoid disappointment. They need to finally risk it. By wanting something that matters, hoping for something specific, pursuing something real, and discovering that even if they fail, even if they are disappointed, they survive. And surviving disappointment is freedom. The freedom to finally live instead of merely existing, to finally want instead of staying numb, to finally try instead of staying paralyzed. The disappointment they avoid is not keeping them safe, it is keeping them dead. And the life they want is on the other side of the disappointment they are too afraid to risk. If they recognize the loss, the ending they refuse to accept, the person or dream or version of themselves that is gone, but they keep holding on to, they have revealed the pain avoidance that is keeping them trapped in the past. They will not let go, will not accept that it is over, will not process the finality of the loss. Maybe it is a relationship that ended years ago that they still think about daily. Maybe it is a person who died that they cannot stop grieving. Maybe it is a dream that failed that they cannot release. Maybe it is a younger version of themselves that no longer exists. Whatever it is, they cling to it. Keep it alive in their mind, replay it, ruminate on it, fantasize about getting it back, and they tell themselves, this is loyalty, this is love, this is honoring what mattered. But it is not. It is avoidance. Avoidance of the devastating pain of acceptance, of finally fully acknowledging that it is gone, that it will not come back, that they must live without it, and that pain feels unbearable. So they avoid it by refusing to accept, by keeping the loss alive, by living partially in the past because fully living in the present means fully feeling the loss. If loss avoidance is their pattern, their freedom is not finding what was lost. It is finally processing that it is gone, so they can be present for what is here. They avoid processing loss because acceptance feels like betrayal. Like if they fully accept the person is gone, they are abandoning them. If they fully accept the dream is dead, they are giving up. If they fully accept the past version of themselves no longer exists, they are losing their identity, so they hold on. They keep the loss alive through constant remembering, through refusal to move forward, through organizing their entire life around what is no longer there. And this creates a specific kind of suffering. They are alive but not living, present but not here, going through motions while their heart and mind are stuck in the past. They cannot fully invest in new relationships because they are still attached to the old one, cannot pursue new dreams because they are still mourning the dead one, cannot be who they are now because they are clinging to who they were then, and they are exhausted. The effort of keeping the past alive while trying to function in the present is destroying them. But letting go feels worse, feels like death, so they stay stuck. In Jungian psychology, this is complicated grief, grief that does not resolve because the person refuses the final stage, acceptance. Jung taught that grief has phases: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. But acceptance requires acknowledging finality, requires saying, this is over, they are gone, it will not come back, I must live without it. And for people who avoid loss, acceptance is impossible, because acceptance means feeling the full weight of what is gone, and that weight feels crushing, so they stay in earlier stages. They bargain with reality, they deny the finality, they get angry at the injustice, but they never accept, and without acceptance, they never move forward. They stay frozen, stuck at the moment of loss, living as ghosts, present in body but absent in spirit, because their spirit is still back there, in the relationship that ended, with the person who died, chasing the dream that failed, clinging to the self that no longer exists. People who will not process loss live half-lives. They date, but every new person is compared to the one they cannot let go of. They pursue goals, but none of them matter as much as the one that failed. They try to move forward, but they are walking backward, constantly looking at what is behind them instead of what is ahead, and they wonder why nothing new works, why relationships fail, why they feel stuck. It is because they are not actually available. They are still attached to what is gone, still hoping it will come back, still refusing to fully accept that it is over. And until they accept, they cannot be free, cannot be present, cannot invest in new possibilities. Because all their energy is going to keeping the loss alive instead of processing it and moving through it. Breaking free from loss avoidance requires the most painful practice: acceptance, not premature acceptance, not false acceptance, but deep, full, final acceptance that it is gone, that they will never see that person again, that the dream is dead, that the past version of themselves will not return. This requires sitting with the crushing weight of finality, requires feeling the devastation of permanent loss, requires crying the tears they have been holding, mourning fully what they have been refusing to mourn. And this is agony, but it is time-limited agony. The pain of acceptance is intense, but it ends. The pain of avoidance is less intense, but it never ends. It becomes chronic, becomes the background of their entire life, becomes the reason they cannot be present, cannot invest, cannot move forward. They must choose acute pain that resolves or chronic pain that never does, and choosing to finally feel the loss fully, to accept it completely, to let it be over, is choosing freedom. Freedom to finally be here, to finally invest in what is present instead of what is past, to finally live their actual life instead of the half-life of someone who is still clinging to what is gone. The loss they will not process is keeping them trapped, and processing it, feeling it fully, accepting it completely, letting it go finally, is the only path forward, the only way to be free. Now that they have seen which pain they avoid and how that avoidance imprisons them, it is time to understand what Carl Jung discovered that changes everything about suffering and liberation. Pain avoided does not disappear. It goes into shadow. It operates from the unconscious, and it creates the exact limitations we were trying to escape. The person who avoids grief cannot love deeply. The person who avoids anger cannot set boundaries. The person who avoids disappointment cannot pursue what matters. The person who avoids loss cannot be present. Each avoidance creates a specific prison, and freedom requires the exact thing they have been running from, requires finally stopping, turning around, and facing the pain they have spent their life fleeing. This is not about seeking pain. This is about understanding that pain avoided becomes pain prolonged, and pain felt is pain that can finally transform and release. Jung spent his career studying how the psyche handles suffering, and he discovered that we have two choices: conscious suffering or unconscious suffering. Conscious suffering is feeling the pain directly, sitting with grief, expressing anger, facing disappointment, processing loss. It is intense, it is difficult, but it is time-limited. When we feel pain consciously, when we allow it to move through us, it transforms, it teaches us, it deepens us, and then it releases. But unconscious suffering is different. Unconscious suffering is what happens when we avoid pain. When we refuse to feel it directly, it does not go away, it goes underground, and it creates symptoms: depression, anxiety, addiction, chronic illness, relationship patterns, life limitations. All of these are unconscious pain, pain that is being experienced indirectly because it was never felt directly. And unconscious pain is worse than conscious pain because conscious pain ends. Unconscious pain becomes chronic. It becomes the structure of your life, the water you swim in, the limitation you accept as reality when it is actually avoidance made permanent. This is why avoidance does not work. They have been avoiding grief, and the result is not less pain. It is numbness, inability to connect, depression that has no clear cause. They have been avoiding anger, and the result is not peace, it is powerlessness, chronic boundary violations, being a doormat. They have been avoiding disappointment, and the result is not safety, it is paralysis, a small life, unfulfilled potential. They have been avoiding loss, and the result is not loyalty, it is being stuck in the past, unable to be present, unable to move forward. Every avoidance creates its opposite. They avoid pain and create suffering. They avoid feeling and create numbness. They avoid risk and create stagnation. The very thing they were trying to prevent through avoidance is the thing they are experiencing through its effects, and they do not see it, because they are so focused on avoiding the direct pain that they do not notice they are living in indirect pain, that their entire life has become organized around avoidance, and that organization is the prison. Jung taught that the only way out is through, that we cannot go around pain, cannot skip stages, cannot avoid what must be felt. The grief must be grieved, the anger must be expressed, the disappointment must be faced, the loss must be processed. There is no shortcut, no bypass, no way to have freedom without first having the pain that leads to it. And this is devastating news for people who have built their entire life around pain avoidance, because it means everything they have been doing is wrong, every strategy they developed, every way they learned to cope, every method they used to stay safe. All of it is keeping them trapped, and the path to freedom requires doing the exact opposite, requires stopping the avoidance, stopping the control, stopping the running, and finally, terrifyingly, feeling what they have been refusing to feel. But here is what Jung also discovered. Pain felt consciously is different from pain experienced unconsciously. When we avoid pain, we experience it as chronic suffering, as limitation, as a life half-lived. But when we feel pain consciously, when we turn toward it instead of away, when we allow it to move through us, it transforms, it becomes wisdom, it becomes depth, it becomes capacity. The person who finally feels their grief becomes capable of profound love. The person who finally expresses their anger becomes capable of healthy power. The person who finally faces disappointment becomes capable of resilient hope. The person who finally processes loss becomes capable of presence. The pain does not destroy them, it deepens them. It transforms them from someone who avoids life to someone who can handle life, from someone who stays safe to someone who lives fully, from someone imprisoned by avoidance to someone freed by acceptance. The pain they avoid is not the enemy. The avoidance is, and the freedom they want is on the other side of the pain they refuse to feel. So now they know which pain they are avoiding and how that avoidance imprisons them. They understand that freedom requires feeling what they have been fleeing. But awareness without practice is just painful knowing. Breaking the pattern of pain avoidance requires action, daily, intentional, courageous action. They must learn to feel pain consciously instead of experiencing it unconsciously. To turn toward discomfort instead of away. To allow what they have been suppressing to finally surface and move through them. This is not about seeking pain. This is about stopping the avoidance that creates suffering. Here is how they actually begin to feel what they have been running from. If they avoid grief, their practice is scheduled mourning. They must create time and space to feel what they have been suppressing. This means setting aside 20 minutes daily where they allow themselves to cry, to sit with sorrow, to feel the weight of what was lost. They do not distract, do not numb, do not tell themselves to be strong or move on. They just feel. They cry. They let the grief move through their body. And when the time is up, they stop. They wash their face. They return to their day. This is not wallowing. This is processing. Grief held indefinitely becomes depression. Grief felt in doses transforms and releases. They practice this daily until the intensity lessens, until they can think about the loss without being flooded, until the grief has moved through instead of staying stuck. And as they process grief, they notice something changing, their capacity to feel joy returning, their ability to connect deepening, their heart opening again because it finally released what it was holding. If they avoid anger, their practice is conscious expression. They must learn to feel anger and express it appropriately. This means when something makes them angry, a boundary violation, an injustice, a disrespect, they do not swallow it. They feel it. They notice where it lives in their body and they express it. Not as rage, not as attack, but as clear, firm communication. That is not okay. I will not accept that. You need to stop. They practice with small violations first. The person who interrupts them, the friend who shows up late again, the colleague who takes credit. Each time, instead of saying nothing, they express the anger appropriately. And they discover that expressing anger does not destroy relationships. It clarifies them, creates boundaries, communicates what is acceptable and what is not. Slowly, through repeated practice, their access to healthy anger returns, and with it, their power, their ability to defend themselves, their capacity to set boundaries. The anger they suppressed was not the enemy. The suppression was, if they avoid disappointment, their practice is risking small wants. They must start wanting again, start hoping again, start trying again, but start small. They identify something they want that they have been afraid to pursue. Not a life-changing goal, something manageable, a class they want to take, a person they want to ask out, a project they want to start, something where disappointment is possible but not devastating, and they pursue it, they try, they hope. And if it works out, they celebrate. If it does not, they practice feeling the disappointment instead of avoiding future, wanting to prevent future disappointment. They sit with the ache of not getting what they wanted. They feel it fully, and they discover they survive it. That disappointment does not destroy them, that they can want, not get, feel disappointed, and still be okay, still be whole, still have the capacity to want again. Through repeated practice of risking small disappointments, they build resilience, build capacity, and slowly they become able to want bigger things, to hope for more, to try for what actually matters, because they know they can survive disappointment. They have felt it before, and they are still here. If they avoid loss, their practice is acceptance rituals. They must create closure where closure never happened. This means writing a letter to the person or dream or version of themselves they cannot let go of. Not to send, to release. They write everything they need to say, everything they wish had been different, everything they are grateful for, everything they are angry about, and at the end they write the words they have been refusing to write. I accept that this is over. I accept that you are gone. I accept that I must live without you. And then they burn the letter. Symbolically releasing what they have been holding. They do this as many times as needed, weekly, daily, until writing those words no longer feels like betrayal, until acceptance feels like truth instead of abandonment. And as they practice acceptance, they notice something shifting, their ability to be present returning, their capacity to invest in the present instead of the past increasing, their life starting to happen now instead of then. The loss does not stop mattering, but it stops controlling them, stops defining them, stops imprisoning them, and they are finally gradually free. For all avoidances, the universal practice is this. Feel consciously what you have been experiencing unconsciously. The pain is already there, the suffering is already happening, but it is happening indirectly, as limitation, as symptoms, as a life half-lived. The practice is bringing it direct, feeling it consciously, allowing it to surface, sitting with it, moving through it, and discovering that conscious pain is time-limited, but unconscious pain is chronic. That feeling pain is how you release it. That avoidance prolongs what feeling transforms. They do not need to avoid pain, they need to finally feel it, and discover freedom on the other side. They have walked through something today that changes everything about how they understand their life. They have seen that the freedom they want is being blocked not by external circumstances, but by internal avoidance. By the pain they refuse to feel, the grief they will not mourn, the anger they will not express, the disappointment they will not face, the loss they will not process. Each avoidance creating a specific prison, each refusal to feel creating a specific limitation. They thought they were protecting themselves, thought pain avoidance was wisdom, thought staying safe was success. But it was not. It was slow death. It was trading freedom for comfort, trading aliveness for safety, trading their actual life for a controlled half-life designed to minimize pain by also minimizing everything else. And now they know. The pain they are avoiding is not the enemy, the avoidance is, and the freedom they desperately want is on the other side of the pain they refuse to feel. Carl Jung taught that transformation requires descent, that we cannot rise without first falling, that we cannot become who we are meant to be without first facing what we have been avoiding. And what they have been avoiding is pain. Not pain in general, specific pain, the grief of what was lost, the anger at what was violated, the disappointment of what did not happen, the finality of what is over. These specific pains that their entire life has been organized around avoiding. And that organization is the problem. That avoidance is the prison. That refusal to feel is the reason they cannot be free, because freedom requires capacity, the capacity to feel everything, to be present with grief without being destroyed, to express anger without losing control, to face disappointment without giving up, to process loss without staying stuck. And capacity is built through practice, through feeling what they have been avoiding, through discovering that pain felt is pain that transforms, that suffering consciously is time-limited, that the way out is through. The pain they are avoiding is the freedom they cannot have, not as punishment, as reality. As the way transformation works, as the price of admission to a full life, they cannot have deep love without the capacity for deep grief, cannot have healthy power without the capacity for appropriate anger, cannot have resilient hope without the capacity to survive disappointment, cannot have presence without the capacity to accept loss. Every freedom requires its corresponding pain, and they have been trying to have freedom without pain, trying to love without risking loss, trying to have power without accessing anger, trying to hope without risking disappointment, trying to be present while refusing to accept finality, and it does not work. It creates the opposite, creates numbness instead of love, creates powerlessness instead of strength, creates paralysis instead of hope, creates being stuck in the past instead of being present. The avoidance creates what they were trying to prevent, and the only way out is to stop avoiding and finally feel. Which pain are they avoiding? Grief, anger, disappointment, loss. And will they keep avoiding it? Keep living in the prison of avoidance? Keep wondering why they feel so limited when they are doing everything right? Or will they finally stop running? Will they turn around and face what they have been fleeing? Will they feel the grief they have been suppressing? Express the anger they have been swallowing? Face the disappointment they have been preventing through never wanting anything real? Process the loss they have been refusing to accept? Share which pain they recognized? Their honesty might help someone else see that their lack of freedom is not circumstantial. It is self-created through pain avoidance. Subscribe for more on feeling what we avoid and reclaiming freedom. 2 more videos appearing now. Choose one to continue. Until we meet again, remember this. The pain they are avoiding is the freedom they cannot have, and no amount of avoidance changes that equation. No amount of control eliminates the requirement. No amount of staying safe creates the capacity to live fully. The only way to freedom is through pain, through feeling what has been suppressed, through expressing what has been swallowed, through facing what has been denied, through processing what has been refused. This is not cruelty. This is how transformation works. This is how humans become capable of handling life instead of just avoiding it. The pain is not the problem, the avoidance is. And they have been avoiding so long that avoidance became their identity, became their strategy, became their prison. And now they have a choice: keep avoiding and stay limited, or finally feel and become free. The answer determines everything: the rest of their life, the depth of their relationships, the fullness of their experience, the reality of their freedom. They cannot have freedom without first having pain, cannot have capacity without first feeling what they avoid, cannot have the life they want without first releasing the life they are clinging to. The pain they avoid is not keeping them safe, it is keeping them imprisoned. And the freedom they seek is waiting. On the other side of the pain they refuse to feel, waiting for them to finally stop running and start feeling, waiting for them to choose transformation over avoidance, waiting for them to discover that pain felt consciously is the portal to freedom, and they are ready, finally, now, to stop avoiding and start living.